Hello, and welcome to the Rules of Acquisition Remix. I am your host, Hugh Crawford, 1/3 of the Kickers of Elves. Thanks again for listening to another episode of the Rules of Acquisition. This week, we will be revisiting the episode The Passenger, which originally was released on March 28th, 2016. From the sound of it, we were still recording in 2015. I hope you all enjoy this episode. I do a voice for some reason in this episode. I don't know why I thought that was funny or a good idea, but I cringed at myself during this. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this more than I enjoyed it. On with the show.
Kayada of the Kobliad, Vantika or maybe Vantika. Oh yeah. Synaptic pattern displacement, Lieutenant Premin. Oh yeah. Make. Live. Oh yeah. It's time for the rules of acquisition.
Hello and welcome to the Rules of Acquisition, a podcast where we will be talking about the greatest Star Trek series that ran concurrently to the next generation. Star Trek Deep Space Nine. With me as always is James Nolan.
Hello.
And Hugh Crawford.
Hello, fellas.
I'm Wade Bowen, of course. And yeah, that's what we're talking about. And more specifically, tonight we're talking about the 8th episode of Season 1 called The Passenger.
Yes. Yeah. This episode aired on February 22nd, 1993. According to the IMDb description, it goes, Rao Vantika, a captured criminal, is badly burned and dies in Bashir's arms. But the criminal's captor believes he is still alive. So, what did we think about this? Any initial thoughts right off the bat?
I will say initially that there is a lot of good mixed in with some poor acting choices.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God, Julian later on. Yeah.
yeah. Later on. Yeah. No.
Holy Jeebus.
Actually, right away, Julian is awful. In fact, my notes go, the first thing I have written down is Julian is the worst. And then the second thing I have written down is Quark is the worst. And then it moves down from that to Lieutenant Premin is the worst. And
wait, I liked Lieutenant Premin. He's my favorite addition to this episode.
Really?
Yeah, no, I'm going to defend Premin.
Okay.
So later on, but
all right.
No. I just thought that I was going to hate this episode. I'm like, oh Christ, am I going to end up hating this? And then it was redeemed, I think.
It bloomed a little, and then to me, the acting choices at the end,
oh boy,
and the central mystery is, and there's a reason for that. I'll get into that when we get into Bashir's acting choices at the end, because there actually is a lot of trivia on what happened in the set there.
Okay, something must have happened.
Something happened. Okay, so
oh boy,
I think it bloomed into like a pretty interesting episode, except for the fact that the mystery is so telegraphed,
right?
That there was zero mystery in it to me.
No, there was no mystery at all.
Yeah,
I mean, it was pretty obvious to anybody who's seen an episode of Star Trek, any of the iterations of Star Trek. It's obvious what happened from that first scene when Bashir finds the criminal, doesn't listen to the lady who knows the criminal, and insists on trying to save him anyway. Mm-hmm. Spoiler, the criminal transfers his consciousness into Bashir, and Bashir, as the criminal,
he does it while saying, "Make me live."
Right. I feel like this episode again is one that is like another Star Trek obligation episode. Now we have the member of the crew is actually turned into a bad guy episode.
Yes.
Except it moves the ball down the field a little bit and actually, does some interesting stuff with station life and the difference between the Bajoran provincial government and, Starfleet.
Yeah, everything with Premin. I don't know much about like the actor because I guess, whatever. I think he was Star Trek 5.
Sure.
But the scenes and that sequence of scenes in the middle with Quark and Odo at the bar, Premin's conversation with Odo after that, Then Primid coming in like a cock on the bridge, and then Cisco's kickdown of him. And then the next scene, which is Primid going with his tail between his legs to fluff up Odo, and then it turns out that there's this giant security breach that Odo didn't see coming.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So everything about those beats, I thought, good story construction. For that leg, I was along for that ride. I almost forgot that there was a supernatural murder caper going on around it.
Yeah. Can we... Oh, man, Julian, this... from the very beginning, he hasn't been good at all for this whole series so far.
So let's separate. Are you talking about El Sadig Fidel not being, or let's call him Alexander Sadig?
I'm talking about the character sucks.
The character sucks, yes. Yes.
Even from that opening scene that he's in here, it's like, okay, they're not even trying to make him likable. They're actively making him... His whole existence in this whole series so far has been a cad.
Yeah, he's a Disney villain.
Of him doing things that are completely unlikable.
Yeah.
There's nothing trying to make him like, especially at the beginning of this, he's talking like, oh, I do everything perfectly, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, all of the characterization he's been given in those sort of first moments. And they do it a lot. It's 8 episodes, but I feel like there's a ton of episodes we've seen of him horndogging after Dax a lot. Now we get to see Odo and Quark horndog after.
Right.
But you get to see him horndog after Dax, pick up a girl at the bar with his stupid-ass story about graduating medical school.
Right.
Taking the test was so dramatic.
And then you get to see him being like a pure braggart. Here, yes, he is like a Disney villain. He's like the guy in the red, what's his name? Gaston?
Yeah.
Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah, right.
That's exactly what it's like.
He's like a Disney villain. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't understand why we get so much screen time with him. He's not interesting on any level. He doesn't have any arc through any of this. It's just like every episode he's awful, and they showcase it for like 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, Dax has done nothing but give readouts on screen for every episode.
Right. I feel like this episode is the first episode where they try to give Julian an arc.
Yeah.
And it's not much of an arc. He's an asshole at the beginning, and at the end of the episode, he's learned a lesson about being an asshole.
What was the lesson?
Oh, at the end of it, he was like, oh, I guess I was wrong. I guess I have to learn to be humble now. It's his last line basically says that much. And then that's like, okay, moving on.
But none of the bad things that he did or anything that came out of that was due to his arrogance or whatever. So it's not like through his arrogance, he brought about what's his name again? The spirit of Hannibal Lecter?
Rao.
Right, yeah.
R.A.
Rao
Vantika. Vantika, yeah.
Yeah, Vantika, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but it's not like through his arrogance he allowed Vantika to come into. If Cisco was the first one through the thing, Vantika would have taken over Cisco.
Yeah.
So it's not like...
Well, it was his arrogance because she told him, don't go in there. And he's like, I got to go in there. I'm a doctor.
Yeah.
And his whole, I'm a doctor, damn it thing. Like Cisco or Odo would have been like, what do you mean don't go in there? And she would have said, it's a dangerous criminal. And they would have, oh, fuck it. They're pragmatic, you know?
Yeah, but that's a subtle... I mean, you're right. I get what you're saying. And I think that would be the way they're written. But that's a subtle sort of cue because in the moment it plays as Federation altruism.
No.
I'm going to help a guy who's dying.
No. It plays as if they set it up with nobody like, Nana Visitor was talking about how she had never seen any sort of medical. They're playing it up as if his ego has had a huge boost because he's so brilliant.
Yeah.
And then he's still riding high on that and disregards that lady's plea to leave the guy alone because he's such a great medical healer. And then he learns his lesson at the end. James, I think what the problem is that that's what they were going for, but they didn't convey it very well at all. Like,
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
They put it in there, like he has a line basically. I forgot what it is at the end. I guess I learned a lesson, or just something.
Mm.
It's like 2 notes. I'm an asshole, and then I learned something at the end. But it's just like one little.
So the story of this episode and the script for this episode was that it was way overwritten by committee by Michael Piller and Ira Behr. It was pitched. I don't know the guy who pitched its name, but it sounds like it was pitched by Charlie Kaufman's twin brother. Because it was pitched.
What?
It was pitched as the lady, the semi-pretty lady with the cop.
Oh, right.
Was infected with Vantika.
Right.
So she was the cop and the criminal.
Yeah, that's what they try to convince the audience is what's happening.
Yeah, well, it was pitched as that, and Bashir, his horndogginess drew him. He started kind of loving her. And then, like, as the show went on, he had to make choices to work with her or to not believe her, or, you know, and
So even with that, they just still like, oh, Julian has one thing, he's a
Yes.
horny dick.
yeah, but I think they tried to move it, maybe take it about being a horny dick and move the ball there.
That's something.
Instead of start with a horny dick and then turn him into I'm infected with a Hannibal Lecter monster, and then move on from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole thing with who Vantika is, there's like one whole thing where they're like, oh, he's in the scripture as a villain. And then they never talk about that again. It's like, whoa, he's a religious figure as well? What?
Yeah,
And then they just like, oh, we're just been chasing him. That's what her life is about.
and that he's faked all these deaths before and all of this kind of stuff, and he's done all this stuff to stay alive.
Right. And for a second, I was like, oh, Deep Space Nine brings religion into Star Trek. That's interesting.
Or to try and make him like, I guess, like a Doc. Is it Randall Savage? Isn't that like a Vandal Savage or
Vandal Savage and the
Vandal Savage.
Yeah.
Basically, this episode moves the ball down the field a little bit with dealing with the clash between Starfleet and the Bajoran crew.
Mhm.
And that's actually the most interesting aspect of this episode. Was that aspect supposed to be its own episode?
No, it was added in as a place filler because they didn't have O'Brien, and I don't know if. And I think it was probably thrown in by Rick Berman.
Really?
It seems to me. There's a lot of finger pointing. Like if you go to Memory Alpha and read all of the sort of comments that all the writers have said, there seems to be a lot of finger pointing. And the guy who pitched it said that they coaxed me into a lot of changes that I agreed to, and then just because I wanted a TV show on the air, I wanted them to ultimately say yes, which just goes down to the point that they're still accepting just dudes off the street pitching the show.
I know.
And so that's like unheard of these days.
That's one thing I like. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
about Star Trek. It's like, oh, you could still send spec scripts in. That's how Brian Fuller got started.
Yeah, but that's great if that you send in a spec script.
If you got Brian Fuller.
Well, it's great if you're Brian Fuller, but no, it's also great if you take that spec script and say, let's move that guy into the writer's room. Work him over a bit, work with him for a month or so, and then he can pitch an episode in our calendar, in our overarching story calendar. It's just probably how they do it now.
Right.
So it's still good you're you're still taking someone off the street, but you're not.
Yeah, well, they don't do it now. That's the whole thing.
Yeah, you're not just handing them the 8th episode.
Yeah.
Because what it was is I think they just committed it to death and just talked it to death.
Probably. It sounds like, yeah, that whole religion throwaway bit sounds like
Yeah.
somewhere somebody had an idea for that they didn't do.
Most of the problems with this episode, I didn't feel like were in the script. I felt like most of it was the actual direction of how, like, you know, some of the action was shot. Some of the scenes were clumsily blocked, I guess. And then, of course, the acting choices, the absurd acting choices by Sadig. I mean, it was just.
Should we talk about this?
Yeah, go for it.
We should definitely talk about it.
Okay, so this is where the Alexander Sadig giving that awful.
Hello, I am a. It reminded me. There's a Tall Dwarfs song that has a dumb, weird. I'm talking weird part to it. That it's exactly what.
Oh my god.
Julian sounded like, but I don't expect our audience to know that a New Zealand band from the 90s.
Talking about songs, they spent a good portion of their script setting up and even the shooting of this episode by giving Quark a song to sing in the bar during his scene with Odo.
What?
Did I forget that? Does he sing a song?
No, he doesn't, but they wanted him to for this episode.
Oh my god.
Which is the first time you've actually seen Quark commit a crime is on this episode. So they wanted to just give him a song to make him
likable. Okay. Yeah, your whole thing you were talking about before about like Quark is not elsewhere and he's like a Disney version of that. Yeah. It's like, well, hey, he does have schemes. He is a criminal. There's that.
Yeah, he's commissioning mercenaries and murder. Yeah, like, I mean, that. But anyway, so they worked on him making a song, but that's neither here nor there. Okay, so on set, they kept saying to Alexander Sadig that they wanted a Hannibal Lecter type performance. They kept saying that.
Oh no. So he got a VHS tape of Silence of the Lambs and gave him a bad impression.
Yeah, so he was doing a slow accent originally.
It's worse than that, though.
Well, no, it's worse than that because I figured out why. Because I watched it, then I read this, and then I went back and rewatched the scenes at the end. So what happens is that he's giving this. Rick Berman called it an almost Bela Lugosi-like performance.
That's perfect.
During when he's Vantika. And so he's talking really slow and in like a Hannibal Lector like performance. And then I guess they don't fix it on set. They don't tell him no, like when he starts it. So they shoot the entire episode with him doing that. Rick Berman sees it and like, this is fucking awful. Fix it. And instead of going back and refilming it, he just re-ADR'd it with his normal voice, but he's having to match the incredibly slow pace that he's speaking.
No way.
Oh.
With his normal voice.
So what we saw was just...
And did they ADR it one word at a time?
Well, I think he...
I was like, oh, okay, just say this word. Okay, cut. All right, say this word because, man, he's just talking in one.
I think that he was doing, like, if you could imagine Alexander Siddig trying to do a Bela Lugosi like performance, like, that you could see him dragging these words out, but when he goes back and he has to talk in a Bela Lugosi, like, it can't work. So it's that he's talking in his normal accent over the slow pace of his mouth. And that just creates...
Okay, the goals.
Watching it, I was like, oh.
I want to share this Tall Dwarfs song that I'm thinking of so that I can actually point out how it's similar, but I'll do that later.
Okay, add that in. So that's how that performance came out that way. And Alexander Siddig is kind of pissed that they did that.
Yeah, I would be too, because, man, making me look bad.
Well, not only that, but I mean, I'm sure he's like, well, tell me to fix it on set so I don't look like an idiot. Like, you know.
Yeah. I don't think I think Siddig should have actually just vetoed the whole, he should have come up, that's kind of lazy to steal Anthony Hopkins' characterization of a character. And then he blames other people when it turns out shitty. That's...
No, you're not, hey, it's blending though. It's not Anthony Hopkins, it's Anthony Hopkins plus Bela Lugosi.
Yeah, let me see here. Like, how old was he when this came out? Because he may have just been so...
Well, this came out in 1993.
And he was born in 65, so he was 30. So I'm gonna go...
Math.
He was 28.
He knew better, is what we're trying to...
I was hoping he was like 22, and then I would have given him a pass.
Right.
But, he's 28, so... I don't know.
Yeah, well, it's rough, man.
I get the feeling, yes, he probably...
I'd be upset if I were him. He's like, God, making me look like an asshole, Rick Berman.
That's why you have a Renee Auberjonois. That's why you have a grizzled old vet on your baseball team.
Right.
Because he can pull you aside and go, dude, this is awful. Stop it.
Yeah.
Did they share any scenes together even? I mean, Avery Brooks should have.
Yes, Avery Brooks is. Or maybe he didn't either. Because maybe those comm scenes, maybe he shot his side of the...
It's a grip saying it, reading the
Yes.
Yeah. Release the tractor beam, yada, yada, yada. Okay, yeah. You got that?
Yes.
Pretty much like that, right?
Yeah.
That was a nice little radio play in the middle of this podcast.
That was great. Yeah.
No, thanks.
But I was going to say, because what's happening in that scene is actually kind of interesting. That essentially Vantika is holding a body hostage. And that's kind of interesting and all of that. So, I mean, like, that could have, like...
But nobody's paying attention to the idea.
Nope.
Because it's so absurdly executed. It's awful.
Yep.
Yeah.
My thinking is that this is whenever a Star Trek actor gets their body taken over or anything like that in all of Star Trek universe, you really get to see like kind of like their chops. Like whenever Leonard Nimoy got anything happen to him differently, whether he was on that planet and the goofy pollen made him all fucked up.
Yeah.
You actually got to see that Spock is just a characterization. He's a great actor to look at. You could see how versatile they are. I mean, you could see with Data, Brett Data. I don't know. I can't remember his...
Brett Data?
Brett Data.
Brett Spiner.
Brett Spiner. That's right. Brett Spiner. You could see how good he is.
Yeah. Nobody knows that Data actually has a first name. It's Brett.
It's Brett.
Brett Data.
But you could actually see how good of an actor he is when he plays the lore. Or, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Or whenever, like in the Generations movie, where he puts in his memory chip for no reason, and I was trying to figure out why does he even put, not his memory memory chip, but his emotions chip.
Right.
What does he even put it in? It's because Brent Spiner went up to the directors and said, "This is a movie. I want to act."
Right.
So that's the only reason he even put the emotion chip in, was for that, just to give him some range in a movie. Yeah, no, so I think that that's what they're trying to do.
But it backfires.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As bad as Sadiq is in this, the other actors do an all right job. Like, Cisco's great in this.
Cisco's great.
Oh, he's a badass.
And then Renee Auberjonois,
Great.
like, noticing just, like, little character bits, like the way he holds himself as a shapeshifter.
Yeah.
I just noticed, like, he arches his head forward, and he's kind of bent over.
Oh, that's kind
He's
of
great.
I thought the girl, the
Vantica's whatever.
Julie Caitlin Brown, yeah. I thought that actress was fine. She was, I think, a little click above Star Trek good.
Yeah, she was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree. She actually made that character seem like it existed in an interesting world.
Yes. Yeah. She,
Like, that character has seen some shit
mhm.
and was the only person equipped to deal with it.
Yeah, my hobby horse of not liking Nana Visitor, I actually wrote, she's a better Kira than Kira.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I can see that.
The thin-faced lady?
Doggedly, like, single focused, and yeah.
Yeah, that's a good. No, I could kind of see that.
You're not wrong.
Do you guys think that there's like a special Federation law for like a section of Federation law, like somebody's specialty of studying case studies of when Federation officers have had their bodies taken over by another party?
Right.
Because it happens so often.
Yes.
Somebody's written their dissertation on that, yeah, back at the academy.
Oh, I'm sure there has. I mean, Picard. I mean, Borg, but he's not held responsible for any of that shit.
Yeah.
Bashir straight up kills some folks.
Yeah.
But he's not going to be held responsible. It's because like, he's covered under fill in the blank,
Mhm.
Statute.
law, or there's a statute.
Well, it's not, he doesn't even have any legal issues. It's not like he has to, like, like, it would be funny if, like, 6 episodes later, they all have to cheer Bashir up because he's been drowning in debt due to legal issues over the killing of these 6 guys.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they resolve these thorny issues pretty fast. Like, oh, we have a clone
Yeah.
that we just created. No, just let it go.
Fuck it.
Oh, Julian just killed a bunch of people.
Fuck it.
He was taken over by this Vantica character. Not his fault.
Fuck it.
If this show was made in 2015, the characters would have to deal with their actions throughout the rest of the series or the season. You know what I mean? I mean, Bashir would be a little bit fucked up that he just killed some guys.
Yeah.
Because he's a moral person. He's a doctor.
Yeah, he's got a god complex from the very beginning. He's like, yes, I can do anything. I can create life and I can take it away.
Yeah, that you're right. I mean, and I think that's the problem with this show right now. And it's unfortunate that it's right out of the gate, is they're just doing Star Trek episodes, man. They're not doing Deep Space Nine episodes.
Yeah.
Actually, it's an improvement, because this last episode and this episode, we have half Star Trek and half Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
And the part of this episode we like is the Deep Space Nine half with the Primin character.
Yeah. Because, I mean, I like that the idea that there's this, that's what's ultimately, that's what's great about Deep Space Nine in the later seasons, is that you see the Federation as this stodgy bullshit. They're good guys, but they come in with a bunch of bullshit, and they come in with a Federation way that chafes everyone around them,
including the viewer who's been big fans of the Federation for like 20 years or whatever at this point.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's sort of the fun of it, and you get to see that with Primin, is that Cisco says, I'm not saying we had, I'm not saying we had our Federation ways, but we have to, we have to be conscious around other people, everything he says to the guy. I mean, and I think that was well done, and I think it was well written.
Cisco seems like he's actually given a lot of thought on how he needs to run that station.
Yeah.
There's a lot of depth to that character that I appreciate.
Yeah, he plays both sides really well. Odo comes up and starts whining, like, come on, Odo, get over it. But then when the Primins goes in the office, he's like, you gotta do what Odo says.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, that's great stuff.
He's, it's really, really well done. I mean, and it's one of those, I don't know, I'm not the first, I think maybe Roger Ebert was the first person to say sometimes it's a pleasure to watch a movie where characters are just doing their occupation well. It's just, if you make a movie about, just guys who work, like West Wing was just a whole show built around people doing their jobs well. Everybody's like really good at their jobs, and there's just a joy that you watch and watching that happen.
Yeah, I think that's definitely at play here. Whenever we like it, it's because the characters are firing on all cylinders.
Yeah. Cisco's just doing his job well.
Yeah,
it's not just that he's an interesting character; it's that you see him be a good commander.
Right.
even when it's not in consequence to the plot of the episode. So that's nice.
Well, guys, what do you guys think? Is there anything you would have changed about this episode?
Well, there was one other thing. I don't know. This is like Angry Nerd Corner, just little science facts.
I like Angry Nerd Corner.
Angry Nerd Corner.
Yeah, okay. Angry Nerd Corner. Okay, for one, they talk about, the guy was in the loading area with an anti-grav generator. Why not just shut off the gravity generator? But whatever, that doesn't matter. And then they get back to the he's hiding somewhere, Vatica's somewhere in the brain because we only use a small portion of it's that whole, the human only uses 10% of that brain, which is a lie. That's total bullshit.
Right.
I wrote that they specifically didn't say 10%, but you could see they wanted to.
Right.
Yeah, they wanted to so bad, yeah. And then they're like talking about, there's these bio-coded messages in the brain and they've got it down to a science. How do Vulcans do it then? I don't know.
Yeah, well,
they did mention that.
He does mention that no one's ever done that but a Vulcan. No,
they mentioned it.
No non-Vulcans ever done
and
it.
And then they have it down to a science, but they don't explain anything about, I don't know. Okay, Angry Nerd Corner is just me being angry.
No, I'm okay.
Those are all valid points. I think we've had Angry Nerd Corner before where we've talked about why do they even have pylons?
Yes.
Yeah, right.
I gotta think. Okay, well, I'm gonna add to Angry Nerd Corner. Why can Romulans not do it? They say only Vulcans do it.
Well,
but Vulcans and Romulans aren't that different.
Romulans are too overcome with emotions to be able to control it.
Oh, so
I think
it takes a Vulcan-like
logic and
constitution to
and concentration. Whereas that's a main difference between Romulans and Vulcans is Romulans are emotional. Right.
All right.
And then something about power wave guides. I don't know what that means.
I don't know what that means either.
Yeah, all the technobabble in this episode was really weak.
Yeah. Is there can we talk about Technobabble since we're about to it seems like we don't have a ton to say on this episode. So let's just talk about Technobabble in general.
Go for it.
Because I wrote this last week. Did they just take 1 week? Mark Pillar came in and said, Wednesday through Friday, I just want you guys working on writing person A, person B, Technobabble conversation. And then you just have them as clip art that you can just kind of shunt into a script. Because when it's main character walks into, what are they don't call it the bridge. What do they call it?
Ops.
Walks into Ops and Cisco is hunched over Dax and they're saying two things, it seems like that would be nice if the writer just gets to go and picks from take it from the clip art, the Google document. And so there's one guy writing all that stuff instead of everybody having to come up with their own Technobabble bullshit.
Yeah, hopefully.
Is that the way what do you think they do? Do you think they do that? Or?
I don't know. They've got one Asperger's guy that just on the writing staff just to do that. So he just really loves it because that's what he grew up loving about Star Trek. And all right, we got the one guy.
Because wouldn't that be a lot easier than having to tell all these guys that pitch your shit off the streets that no, you're using the shields versus the deflectors differently? I don't know, because you're right, because I find all of the Technobabble is not. You're right. In this episode, it was bad. In some episodes, it's better.
Other episodes, it's serviceable.
Yeah.
Where it's you could kind of wrap your mind about what they're saying.
Yeah.
What Wade's talking about here is absolutely right. It's just garbage. Just trying to move the ball down the field plot-wise.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Duridium, which is what the whole shipment's about. They're already mining Duridium in the Gamma Quadrant.
Yeah.
Whatever the Fin-Face race that Vatica and the Better Kira, their race needs Duridium to survive for some reason.
Yeah, their cells don't hold or something, and so
the Cobliad, right?
Yes, their cells are falling apart. And so they need the Duridium to hold their cells together.
Right. Okay. So if they don't have it, that fin in the middle of their face splits and they just kind of...
Or if they have enough of it, maybe it goes away, their hairstyle gets symmetrical, and they get attractive.
Maybe, because who's mining this Duridium? Because when Julian steals the ship and speaks in his bad Bela Lugosi Hannibal Lector, because they skipped on the makeup on that because... all the people that he kills, they're all human. They're we don't have time for makeup. So if the Cobliad are mining it, maybe they do lose their fin when they get enough, because whoever those people were didn't have any makeup.
Well, they were mining it in the Gamma Quadrant.
Yeah.
So though we haven't actually had a proper first contact yet, we are already stripping the Gamma Quadrant for resources.
Yeah,
So
that was quick. Yeah, I think they just assume because this is like an episodic anthology series, oh, we can just drop in without any callback because it's understood that they've just been at their status quo for a while at any random episode.
Yeah, they're not thinking that 20 years from now, three losers are going to have a podcast where they talk about this for an hour an episode.
Yeah, right.
Right.
So if they had only knew then, they would have. So yeah,
that's all.
One interesting tidbit is that the actress, her name is Julie Caitlin Brown, who played the Finn face better than Kira. She went on to be in another Star Trek episode, a Next Generation episode, and then she did 2 seasons on Babylon 5 and took that success to turn to having a recording album. She has an album that she appears on the cover, and all of the liner notes are written as her character from Babylon 5.
What?
She should do an album with Dr. Crusher.
That would have been awesome.
Yeah, Beverly Crusher released a bad jazz vocal album, right? Well, she wasn't the main in Babylon.
She was only in 23 episodes. I don't know Babylon 5.
Okay, I don't know.
It seems like, no, because it looks like they have up to 110 episodes, and she was only in 23 of them.
Okay.
So she wasn't. I get the feeling she's a later edition. Wait, no, she's first season. Wait,
Maybe she Denise Crosby them.
yeah, she's first season. So maybe she did. She was the Denise Crosby in Battle.
She Denise Crosby them. That's exactly what happened.
Awesome.
All right. Do you guys have anything you want to? Any additional thoughts on maybe anything else?
I guess we got to do what things we would change, even though that's all this episode's been.
Well, if you want to just put a bow on it, that's fine.
Would you change anything that we haven't talked about?
Yeah, Hugh, you.
Me, I would have changed. What I would probably have done is I'd gone back in time and scrubbed O'Brien and put Fremen in some capacity.
That's kind of what I was like. I would have made Fremen a recurring character at the beginning. It's like,
He is.
oh, are they going to bring this guy back? Nope.
Well, what is that? I mean, essentially, Worf kind of takes that role, right? In later seasons, they bring him on to be like a wartime security guy
Oh, yeah.
for the Dominion. Am I correct on that?
Basically, yeah.
No, I don't quite remember. They bring him on
As a security guy, basically, right?
He's not a security guy. They
He's
bring
the
him in.
captain of the Defiant.
Right.
Yes, he's the captain of the Defiant, which is just like the special attaché to the station.
Spoilers.
He's the captain of the Defiant, which is basically makes him the special attaché to the station. He's basically like a mall cop, right?
Yeah.
But like patrolling the wormhole or whatever. Odo is still station security. And I think every once in a while they talk about how they would have done things differently. Like they compare style a little bit. But I'm talking about using Fremen as a character in place of O'Brien. And I think that was my problem is that
They have completely different jobs. He's a security liaison and O'Brien's an engineer.
I think you're saying maybe give Cole Meany the job of Federation security attaché.
That wouldn't make sense.
no, I would probably make Dax the head engineer. And I would make Fremen the second command of security and have that be a running... Because all Dax is at this point is a backup. If something breaks and O'Brien can't fix it, Dax fixes it. If somebody gets hurt or something goes on medically and Bashir's out of commission, Dax checks it out. She's like an all-purpose...
Well, she does have an official position as the science officer.
Which is what Spock was.
Spock, yeah.
And that is a cool position. They don't utilize it as all.
They sure don't, yeah.
No,
Is
they
what I'm
don't.
saying. They might as well have her be something else because they don't utilize that at any level,
Yeah.
much less an interesting one.
No, I agree.
Well, I don't hate O'Brien as much as you do.
Yeah, I know that your hatred of O'Brien is... I'm starting to kind of understand your perspective on it, but I still just don't share it. But I agree with you that Fremen in this episode is nice.
He's more interesting in this one episode than O'Brien has been in the entire series so far.
I don't know if I agree with that.
He's got conflict. O'Brien they just give him like a wife who doesn't like it there.
But she's over that. You and Cisco need to let that go. She was angry for like a little bit.
They need to let it go because they keep on reminding us.
They need somebody. I don't want to hear what Fremen's love life is like, honestly, though.
Okay. So let me look at this. James Lashley. I love it. He's in real movies too. He's in Wild Wild West.
Real movies?
I like how that's your first one that you go to.
Well, that's his third ranked one on IMDb. Let me see. He is in the next episode also.
Yeah.
So he's a two.
He comes back. He's in it for like 3 episodes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
As soon as like Con Air wraps, he's gone.
Mhm.
Yes.
But yeah,
So he's doing okay. I like him too. I think he's the best thing about this episode. This came close to being the best episode since the pilot. This came really close to that, but they just dropped the, like, it just didn't work. What they, like, if they had just shot it, if they had made all of their filming decisions differently, it would have worked for me.
what do you think, Wade? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think the main problem is that they just don't know what they're doing with the Julian Bashir character yet.
Yes.
Right.
And then it's so ham-fisted, his whole characterization, that it just like, okay, they're doing a Julian episode kind of, but it's just like sucks as far as him.
But they double down on it on every, like, we didn't know what we were doing last time, but here it is for real this time, guys. And
That's true. They do make a choice.
Yeah. He's
Right.
And I feel like they decided that, like, oh, this is the first episode and we're going to end with trying to humanize him, but we're not going to do that until like one line at the very end where he says something like, oh, I'm embarrassed.
Yeah, that the one thing I would change is that I would make it whatever he did to get Vantika into himself, whatever that the sort of mechanism, which here that's just he injects him with finger syringes or something. I don't know, like, you know, futuristic little, they inject it with his fingernails. But if they had done it to where Julian's hubris brought it into himself, and more in just that he wanted to say, I mean, because I watched that scene as just that Julian, I see now that you're probably right, but if he had consciously, through trying to go too far or trying to save him too much, ended up unlocking it,
Yeah.
to where you actually see like that his self-regard and his sort of belief in his powers and his not listening to anyone else around him. And yes, specifically women, because you have portrayed him as a womanizer. Like, if that becomes a thing and then he's humbled through this whole process by that, you can even say, he says, I feel awful about everything that goes on. And then Kira could say, but it wasn't your fault. He goes, but it kind of was.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of character development at the end, that would have been nice.
Yeah.
But at this point, he is mostly just a victim of circumstance.
Yeah, that would have been a lot better than what we saw.
Yeah. Your whole explanation there was
Just that if he had welcomed in Vantika's sort of possession of him, and he allows Vantika to enter him, and then all of the bad shit happens, and at the end, he gets to feel guilty not for what Vantika did while inside Bashir, but actually what he did to bring Vantika there. That if he could feel like it was his fault,
yeah,
that would be a lot more fulfilling, and you would actually have a true character arc instead of him just being a victim of circumstance, which is what you have in this episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good insight. You're right.
Even if I can make the point one more time. No. Okay.
Any thoughts on your end, Wade?
Yeah, what would you change?
Yeah, I mean, I would have just tweaked Julian's little arc there and figure out more. I mean, but that's easy to say in hindsight.
Yeah.
They should have made him better. Yeah, they tried.
He should have acted it better, that's for sure. But
They should have just done a better job. That's what I would have done.
yes. Are we ready to put a bow on this?
I think we might
I
be.
think so.
I will say that next week's episode, I will just tease it as I've read that it is Avery Brooks' least favorite episode of Deep Space Nine.
Oh man, I can't
Oh,
wait.
boy.
Oh man, I gotta watch that shit right now.
So yes, that's just a tease it for next week.
Nice.
All right. Well, that has been us talking. That's us doing the rules of acquisition. Keep listening. Follow us on Twitter and whatnot. And we'll see you next week.
Awesome.
3 to beam out.
I love that you got that.
I'll never forget. Believe me. That's the highlight of my night, saying that dumb thing.
Please follow us on Twitter at AcquisitionPod.
Nope Kickers Podcasts actually.
Okay. Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode. It was kind of a short one. I think it's because we found that to be a pretty run-of-the-mill Star Trek episode. It wasn't that great. It wasn't that bad. And those episodes tend to run a little shorter than the really good episodes, we find a lot to talk about. And the really bad episodes, we find a lot to talk about. I had a lot. I chimed in on this episode a lot more than I remember. I had a lot of strong feelings about this episode, and that sort of surprised me in revisiting it. One of the things that we kind of speculate on in this episode is, James brought up a good question about Technobabble and how is it created in the writer's room. He made the crack about just like setting aside some time and coming up with Technobabble to insert later and maybe having a Google Doc. Which is certainly how it would be done if, we were making up Technobabble. So what I did was I went ahead and did a little bit of research about Technobabble and how it was written. And what I found, I didn't find anything on how it was written. I just found a lot of quotes about the show's creators and how they feel about Technobabble. Technobabble, I guess, was originally phrased, or like the person who coined the phrase was Brent Spiner. It was also called, some of the actors also called it, quote, pillar filler, end quote, after executive producer Michael Pillar. The first Q episode the first and last Q episode in Deep Space Nine had a quote that actually called it. Let's see. This is from Memory Alpha. Q go to the senior staff of Deep Space Nine, who had been unable to find the cause of a crippling power drain on the station, by saying, quote, Picard and his lackeys would have solved all this Technobabble hours ago. That was from Q-less. When asked about the origin of that line, Ira Stephen Bear said he enjoyed Q's line about Technobabble and Q-less commentating. Good grief, I can't. Commenting, quote, it was a line we wrote with great glee because at that point we had hated the goddamn Technobabble, end quote. That's from the Captain's Log Supplemental, the unauthorized guide to the new Trek Voyages. That's kind of funny that Ira Stephen Bear would say that he was sick of, Technobabble, because that was only the 8 episodes in. I don't know. It wasn't very far into Deep Space Nine. And according to Memory Alpha, beginning in Season 3 of Deep Space Nine, the writers made a conscious effort to reduce the amount of Technobabble in the scripts. So, there you go. That's pretty much all the useful stuff that I could dig up on Technobabble, which is one of the things I think all three of us have a love-hate relationship with in the show, as we expressed in this episode. Other than that, I really didn't have a whole lot this week. It was a fun short episode to revisit. I am mildly embarrassed at my choice to do a voice and a bit in the middle of this episode. I don't know what overcame me. I will, going forward, try to be more conscious of that, of not doing that. Alright. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed it. Thanks again for listening to another episode of The Rules of Acquisition. Until we see you next week, one to be out.
Send us an email at rulesofacquisitionpodcast@gmail.com. You can turn this off now.
Louis likes his daily dip. Adorably, he likes to drip. To squeaking dolls, he owes his life. His only turn on is his wife. his daily dip.